Bible!
In the beginning, God created a great big universe with tons of shining stars, a bright burning sun, and do you remember what else?
Yep, planets.
Right. Then he took a planet and filled it with so many special things.
Earth. That's where we live.
Right again. And on the earth, he made two very special creatures.
Oh, I know. A whale and a dinosaur.
Nope, those aren't the creatures I'm talking about. Keep guessing.
A platypus and sloth. A dog and a cat. A lizard and a blobfish. Oh, I give up.
A man and a woman.
I knew it. Well, actually I didn't. But now I do.
God named the man
Adam.
and the woman he named
Eve.
Now, the earth was a pretty wild place. So, God planted a garden for Adam and Eve to live in.
Wow! How cool is that?
God called the garden Eden. And inside the garden, Adam and Eve had everything they needed. And best of all,
We are friends with God.
but friendship only works if there is something very important: trust. If Adam and Eve wanted to continue to be God's friends, they needed to trust Him. They needed to listen to God.
Trusting God should be easy, since He loves us so much. And He knows everything.
And it was easy. For a while.
Just a while?
You see, there was this one tree.
I thought there were lots of trees in the garden.
Oh, there were. But there was this one particular tree in the garden that was different. God said,
Don't eat from that tree.
So they had a gazillion trees with all the fruit they could want. And just one they couldn't touch?
Yep.
Just that one?
Uh-huh.
Easy peasy.
It should have been. And Adam and Eve were just fine doing as God had told them up until a new voice showed up in the garden.
A new voice? Who was it?
It was the voice of the enemy of God, and it was coming from a sneaky, tricky snake that said,
Are you sure God said you can't eat the fruit from that tree?
Oh, we're sure. God said that if we eat that fruit, we will die.
And then the snake did something that no one had ever done before in God's beautiful world. The snake lied.
You will surely not die.
Huh?
No, if you eat of that tree, you'll become wise and smart like God.
That doesn't sound right. So for sure they stopped listening to the sneaky snake and walked away, right?
No.
What? No way!
They thought about what the snake said.
It would be great to be as wise as God.
Then we'd know everything too.
What to do?
What to do?
What did they do?
Adam and Eve decided to trust the snake and go their own way. They did what God told them not to do. They ate the fruit.
Oh, no, 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 no!
At that moment, sin entered God's wonderful world. You see, sin is when we ignore God and choose our own way, just like Adam and Eve did.
That sneaky snake! He lied to Adam and Eve, and they listened to him instead of God. This is a terrible story.
Yes, that snake was terribly sneaky. And since Adam and Eve sinned, they had to leave the garden.
Yes, because they sinned. They went their own way instead of God's way.
Yep, and after a while they had kids. And then their kids had kids.
grandkids.
And their grandkids had great-grandkids. Then the great-great-grandkids had kids. And as all those people spread around the world, something else was spreading too. Sin. People were choosing their own way instead of God's way. Fighting, stealing, lying and hurting each other, and making God's world a very ugly place. Until finally, God said,
Enough! It's time to start over.
Start over? How?
God picked one person to start his world over again.
Noah!
Noah was a righteous man. He tried very hard to make right choices. In a world where everyone was doing their own thing, Noah was always ready to do what God asked. He had been practicing listening to God and being obedient for a long time, more than 500 years.
How could anyone be that old?
People lived a long time back then. Are you all right?
I was thinking about the candles on his birthday cake.
I see. So God said to Noah,
I want you to build a boat.
What's a boat?
A thing you can float in if there's a flood.
What's a flood?
It's when water covers everything. It's why you need a boat.
How big?
Big enough for your family and some animals.
How many animals?
All of them. 2 of every kind.
Then God gave him plans for building the big boat.
Noah was already so old. Building a boat that big would take a long time.
Right. It took Noah and his family years and years and years.
Hey, Dad, are we done yet?
Not yet.
Now are we done?
Nope.
On top of that, Noah's neighbors probably came by to laugh at him.
So it's called a boat. And it's for floating on water?
Yep.
There's no water anywhere.
Poor Noah. He was just doing what God told him.
Yes, he wanted to be God's friend even if everyone else thought he was silly. Finally, one day, a drop fell from the sky.
Hey!
Then another, and another, and another. And then...
The animals started to come?
Yep. God sent them to Noah, and Noah packed them all into his big, big boat.
Now are we done?
Then God closed the door.
We are.
The rain continued to come down, harder and harder. Suddenly, having a boat looked like a pretty good idea. The water rose higher and higher. God covered the land with water so that all the fighting and hurting died. But so did most of God's creation.
That's sad.
It was very sad. It rained and poured for 40 days. And Noah's big, big boat floated on the water 50 days, 60 days, 100 days, 150 days.
That is a long time.
It was. Then, finally, the water started to go down, 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 down. Until one day, Noah's big, big boat came to rest on top of a mountain. And God said,
Let's start again.
So, Noah and his family, plus a bunch of seasick animals, walked out of the big, big boat into a clean, fresh world.
I have placed a rainbow in the sky as my promise that I will never again flood the earth.
It was time to start again.
God had given people another chance to live the right way. And sadly, people kept choosing the wrong way.
Oh no, that's really bad.
It was. Once again, the world was sick with sin. People were fighting, cheating, lying, hurting each other, and ignoring God. And on top of that,
Yes?
people were building bigger and bigger cities with more people doing more bad things.
So, did God send another flood?
Oh no, God had promised not to flood the whole world again.
So, what did God do to stop sin this time?
He asked someone to help.
Who did he ask?
From one of the biggest cities, a place called God called a man.
Abram.
Abram. You may know him as Abraham because later God changed his name. He lived in with his family. And when I say family, I don't just mean his mom and dad.
So, who did he live with?
Abram lived with his mom, dad, sisters, brothers, nephews, nieces, granddads, grandmas, uncles, aunts, cousins, second cousins, third cousins. Well, you get the picture.
That sure sounds crowded.
It probably was. But you see, in those days, it was good to live in a big group.
Why?
Because if you were in a big group, it was harder for other groups to hurt you or take over your land. People didn't go out on their own. They stuck together in large families for protection.
I get it.
So that's what Abram did. Until one day when God spoke to him.
Oh, Abram,
Yes? Yes. Are you calling to me, God?
I want you to do something.
Yes. Sure. Of course.
I want you to go out on your own.
What?
At this point, Abram didn't know much about God. Back then, people didn't have Bibles like we do.
Why not?
Because the Bible hadn't been written yet. So he didn't have all the stories we have today that show us how trusting God is the best thing to do. So when God said,
I want you to go out on your own. I want you to leave your family and follow me.
Abram was faced with a choice. Would he stay with his family where things were safe, or would he trust that God had a plan?
What did he do?
Well, Abram said,
Yes, I will do as you are asking me to do.
So Abram, along with his wife,
Sarai.
you may know her as Sarah, because later on God changed her name too. They left their big family and country
Goodbye.
and wandered off into the middle of nowhere, following God. And then one night,
Abram,
Huh?
Abram, you have done as I asked. You have trusted me.
Yes, I did.
As you follow me, I will be with you always. You will never be alone.
Oh, really? That's wonderful.
Not only that, I have 3 promises for you. I'm going to give you so many kids and grandkids and great-grandkids that your family will become a nation.
A nation?
a nation is a big group of people that live in a very large place.
So God promised to make Abram's family?
A great nation, yes.
Wow!
But wait, there's more. God also promised Abram that his family would have their own land, and that the whole world would be blessed through Abram and his kids.
Double wow! Triple wow! 3 promises!
There was only one problem.
Really? What?
Abram and Sarai were old, and they didn't have any kids.
Oh, so how could they become a big family and a great nation when they didn't have kids?
Because of the one who called them out in the first place.
God?
Yes, God had called Abram and Sarai to follow him, and they did. Because they trusted God, he promised to make them a great and special nation that would bless the whole world.
But what was the blessing?
Abram and Sarai didn't quite know yet. They had to keep trusting God. It was years and years before Abram and Sarai started seeing God's promises come true. And it all began with a little baby boy named Isaac, who came when they least expected it. Do you remember how the Israelites were once slaves in Egypt?
Oh, yes. It was a really hard time for God's people.
It was. But as God often did, he had a plan to help his people. And this time, it started with
Moses.
Oh, I know him. Moses was the baby that grew up in Pharaoh's palace, even though he was an Israelite.
You remembered. Moses was living in Pharaoh's palace of plenty. He ate Pharaoh's fine foods and dressed in Pharaoh's dandy duds. All in all, he lived a
Pretty fine life.
Yes, well, that was until
Uh-oh, what happened?
Moses saw an Egyptian man hitting an Israelite and he got really, really mad.
Stop treating him that way. Stop! Stop!
Moses got so mad that he hurt the Egyptian really bad.
Oh, no!
The Egyptian died, and right away Moses knew he was in big trouble.
If they catch me, it'll be the end.
So what did he do?
He ran. He ran right out of Egypt. He kept on running. He ran so far that he ran straight into the desert. And there he stayed.
Wow. For how long? A few months?
No.
A year?
Nah.
A couple of years. 3, 4, 5, 6, 10?
40.
40 years?
He was there so long that he met a nice girl named
Zipporah.
got married, had kids, and became a...
Here, cotton ball. Here, cream puff. Here, lamby wamby.
A shepherd?
Right. And although Moses didn't have all the fancy stuff from his old life, his new one was pretty good. At least it was better than going back to Egypt and getting thrown in jail. So, Moses figured he'd just stay in the desert and never go back to Egypt. But things in Egypt were not going well for the Israelites. So, one day...
Huh? What's that?
Moses saw something weird. A bush was burning, but it didn't burn up.
What do you mean?
The bush just kept burning and burning. And then, if that wasn't weird enough...
Moses.
The bush spoke?
Only it wasn't the bush speaking, it was God.
Take off your sandals. You are standing on holy ground. I have heard the cry of the Israelites. It is time to save them and bring them to the land I promised.
Well, that sounds like a good idea.
I want you to lead them.
Well, that sounds just... Excuse me?
Go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go.
Me?
Moses went on to explain to God why that was not a very good idea. Although he was important before, he was a nobody now. He wasn't very popular in Egypt after a man had died and it was his fault. Pharaoh wouldn't listen to him, and people wouldn't believe him, and...
I'm not a great public speaker. No.
I will go with you. Hold out your staff.
But... So God turned Moses' staff into a snake. And then back into a staff.
Will you do cool stuff like that in front of Pharaoh?
Yes, and things even more amazing than that.
So, what did Moses do?
What could he do? He knew God was calling him to do a special job. He knew God promised to go with him. So, Moses picked up his staff, and he and his family started walking back to Egypt to do what God asked him to do.
And God went with him.
Yep, he sure did. In the days when Israel was ruled by judges, there was a young woman named
Ruth.
And she lived in a country called Moab.
Moab?
Yep, it was right next to Israel.
So they were like neighbors.
Right. Now, Ruth was married to a man named Mahlon, who had a brother named Kilian, who married a woman named Orpah. Mahlon and Kilian were the sons of Naomi and Elimelech.
Okay. Those names are really hard to say.
They are. People had very interesting names back then. But those names aren't the hardest part of this story.
Oh no! Is the story sad?
It starts out that way.
Oh.
Before they were married, Mahlon and Kilian were living in Moab with their mom and dad because there was a famine in Israel. Do you know what that is?
Oh yeah, a famine is when there isn't enough food.
Right. And that's where the story gets sad.
What happened?
After they moved to Moab, Elimelech died.
That's so sad.
Yes, it is. But then something even sadder happened.
What was it?
A little while after they married Ruth and Orpah, Mahlon and Kilian died too.
Oh no! So Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth were left all alone?
Right.
What did they do?
Naomi was very sad, and she decided,
I have no sons, and I'm too old to work, so I better go back to Israel, where I'm from. But you, Orpah and Ruth, stay here in Moab, where you have family and friends.
So Naomi said a teary goodbye to Orpah and Ruth and started her journey. But soon after, she realized that Ruth was following her.
What are you doing?
I'm going to Israel with you.
With me? Why?
You're my mother-in-law, and I love you. I want to make sure you're going to be okay.
But what about your family?
I will love your family like my own, and I will love your God.
That is so amazing! Ruth was willing to give up everything for Naomi.
That's right. God really loves it when we show love like that.
Oh, thank you, Ruth.
So off they went.
Together.
Yes, and when they were in Israel, they met a man named
Boaz.
Boaz had a nice house and a lot of land and plenty of food. And
I love God.
yes, Boaz loved God. Boaz heard how Ruth had left her family and country to take care of Naomi. So Boaz decided he should help them.
That is so nice. How did he help?
Well, first Boaz let Ruth pick food from his fields for free, so that she and Naomi would have plenty to eat.
Wow!
Not only that, Boaz offered to make Ruth his wife, so she could have a home and family again.
Double wow!
And that's not all that Boaz did for them.
What? What else did he do?
He redeemed the land that used to belong to Naomi and her husband.
Redeemed? What does that mean?
Redeem means to buy back, to pay the price so something or someone can be free.
So, Boaz bought back the land that used to belong to Naomi.
And gave it to her as a present.
I love this!
The story of Ruth and Naomi reminds us about God's rescue plan. Just like Boaz had to pay a price to redeem Naomi's land, many years later, someone would be born in Ruth's family who would pay the price to redeem the whole world from sin.
Wait a minute. Do you mean Jesus?
That's right, Jesus, our Redeemer. Many, many years ago, Israel had a big problem.
Really? What was it?
Their enemy came to attack them.
That is a big problem.
So, King Saul, the leader of Israel, sent out a messenger to ask for help throughout the land. The messenger passed by a town where a man named Jesse lived with his big, strong sons.
The Philistines are attacking, and King Saul needs brave and mighty men to fight.
Well, when Jesse's sons heard that, they said,
Brave and mighty? That's us!
So off they all went, all except for their little brother,
David. I take care of the sheep.
David was too young and too small to go to war. So, instead of fighting, David brought food to his brothers. One day, while he was visiting them, David saw a big, huge Philistine.
Was he one of the Philistines attacking Israel?
Yes, and his name was
Goliath. I'm the baddest, biggest, strongest guy around.
The Philistine leader said,
If your strongest man can beat our strongest man, we will be your slaves. But if our strongest man can beat your strongest man, you will be our slaves.
The Israelite soldiers were really scared, but someone had to fight Goliath.
Who's brave enough to fight?
I will.
You? You're just a kid!
God has helped me save our sheep from a lion and a bear. And God will help me save Israel from Goliath and the Philistines.
Well, it sounded
crazy,
but no one else volunteered. So, King Saul said,
All right, here, use my sword.
Uh-oh. It's too heavy. I'll just use this.
A slingshot?
I use this slingshot to protect my sheep from lions and bears. And I'll use it to protect us from the Philistines.
Then, David picked up 5 smooth stones and walked out onto the battlefield.
He was such a nice kid.
Israel announced that they were sending their champion out to meet Goliath. So, the giant Philistine turned to meet him.
Where is he?
Right here.
You? I'm going to feed you to the birds.
Goliath! Goliath! Goliath!
David must have been so scared.
Maybe, but David trusted God and said,
This is God's battle.
Oh, yeah? Well, this is my spear.
You come at me with your big spear and strong armor, but I come with the power of my big, strong God.
And just then, David slung a stone through the air and hit Goliath right
between the eyes. Uh-oh.
So
Israel was safe.
And who did God use?
Not big, strong King Saul or his army.
Not Jesse's warrior sons.
It was David because he trusted God.
And when we trust God with everything, God can use us to do amazing things.
Even if we are small.
That's right. A very long time ago, in a place called Persia, there lived a king.
Me, King Xerxes.
Xerxes?
Yep, a tough name and, well, kind of a tough king.
Why was he so tough?
He had a bad temper.
What? Who said that? Get rid of them!
Whoa, he does have a temper.
Well, King Xerxes needed a queen, so he searched throughout the land for the best queen of all.
No, 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 no. Hey! Who are you?
Esther.
Now, Esther was an orphan, which means she had no mother or father. She lived with her cousin,
Mordecai.
He worked for King Xerxes at his palace. Both Mordecai and Esther were Jewish.
Jewish? What does that mean?
You see, God's people were called the Israelites because...
They were the children of Israel.
Right. Well, there came a time that Israel split in two. The southern half was called Judah, and the people from Judah were called...
Jews!
Okay, I get it.
Now, the Jewish people were not very popular in King Xerxes' land, and he didn't know that Esther was a Jew. He just knew that...
She is so pretty and kind! I love her!
In fact, he loved her so much that he made Esther queen.
Oh, what a nice story.
Well, not so much.
Really? Why?
Things got complicated. You see, King Xerxes had a friend named Haman.
Yes, like, hey man, at least you won't forget me.
Haman didn't like the Jews at all, and he especially didn't like Mordecai, because Mordecai would never, ever, ever bow down to him. Finally, Haman got so fed up with Mordecai that he went to see the king.
Oh, Haman!
Hey, king! Your Highness. I have something important to tell you.
Haman lied to the king and said that the Jews were troublemakers and the land would be better off without them.
Oh no! I hope the king didn't listen to him.
He did. The king signed a law that said all the Jewish people would be killed.
That's scary! Did Esther pack her bags and go?
No.
No?
Mordecai had a plan.
You have to talk to the king.
Esther was scared. If someone went to the king without an invitation, you could be killed. But Mordecai said,
maybe this is why God allowed you to become queen. Esther, you can save your people.
So what did she do?
Esther gathered her courage and prepared a feast.
A feast? Why?
She invited the king and Haman, and just as they were starting to enjoy the meal, she told on Haman. She said,
King Xerxes, someone is going to kill my whole family and me.
The king was surprised.
What? Who would want to kill my queen?
That man.
Haman?
He plans to kill all the Jewish people. And I am a Jew.
Like I said, King Xerxes had a temper, and he said,
Haman! Whatever you were going to do to the Jews will be done to you.
No, please, I'm sorry.
That was the last time anyone had to worry about Haman.
Wow, God really used Esther's bravery in a big way.
Yes, he did. God used the bravery of Esther, an orphan girl who became queen, to save the children of Israel. In a village called Nazareth, there was a young woman named
Mary.
One day, God sent an angel to give her a special message.
A special message? What was it?
The angel said,
"You will have a son."
A son?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not even married.
Mary wasn't married yet, but she had promised to marry a man named
Joseph.
Then the angel said something truly amazing.
The baby will be a blessing for the whole world. He will be the Son of God.
That's the promise they were waiting for.
Yes, Mary would give birth to the Son of God, the blessing for the whole world.
That's so amazing!
And if you were shocked to hear about this, you can imagine what Mary must have felt like. Why, you would think she would have passed out and fallen on the floor right then. But Mary was brave. She trusted God. And she said,
I am the servant of the Lord. May this happen just as you have said.
Wow! Mary really trusted God.
Yes, she did. Then the angel said,
The baby's name will be Jesus.
Was this the Messiah the people had been waiting for?
You got it!
I knew it! So then what happened?
Well, when it was time for the baby to be born, Joseph and Mary traveled to a place called Bethlehem.
Was that a long ways away?
It was, and they got there by...
A donkey! That must have been hard.
I think so. And on top of that, when they got to Bethlehem, they suddenly needed a place for Mary to have the baby.
Oh, did they look for a hospital?
They didn't have hospitals back then.
What about a palace? I mean, the Son of God should be born in the best place, right?
Well...
Or the best hotel?
All the inns were full.
So, what did they do?
Since all the inns were full, Mary had her baby in...
A barn?
A barn. The blessing that Israel had been awaiting for almost 2,000 years was born in a barn.
Oh, my!
Mary didn't have her baby in a fancy palace or a nice warm inn. Nope. Jesus was born in a stinky, smelly barn next to cows and sheep and goats and chickens. The promised blessing for the whole world had finally come, but he didn't arrive quite the way people expected. Jesus' disciples were very busy in Jerusalem. The Holy Spirit had come and they were boldly sharing the good news.
Jesus died for our sins.
With everybody.
I'd like to follow Jesus.
I'd like to follow Jesus too.
Wow, so many followers.
Yep, and now it was time to spread the good news all over the Roman world.
How would they do that?
Oh, God had someone special in mind for the job.
Peter?
Nope.
John?
No.
Andrew? Matthew? James? Simon? Bartholomew?
No, it was a man named
Saul,
also known as
Paul.
Saul was his Hebrew name, but outside of Israel, people knew him as Paul.
So, Saul was Paul?
Yep, and he was also
a Pharisee. And like all good Pharisees, I want to make sure everybody follows all the rules, all the time.
Remember, the Pharisees thought Jesus was breaking all the rules. So, they had worked with the Sadducees to have him arrested.
They wanted to hurt Jesus, and they did.
Right. Well, Saul was so concerned about the rules that after Jesus died, he made it his job to
arrest him, arrest her, arrest them. I'm making it my job to arrest as many of Jesus' followers as I can. Ha 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 ha!
So Saul, who was Paul, was a Pharisee?
And an enemy of Jesus.
But how could God use an enemy of Jesus to spread the good news about him all over the world?
Because even though Paul was going one way, God was about to turn him around.
How?
By stopping him in his tracks. You see, one day, Saul was traveling to a town called Damascus, hoping to find more of Jesus' disciples.
I'm gonna arrest him, I'm gonna lock him up, I'm gonna
When suddenly, a bright light hit him right in the face.
Oh!
A bright light?
A very bright light. And then a voice from heaven said,
Saul, why are you trying to hurt me?
Who was it?
That's what Saul wanted to know. And the voice replied,
I am Jesus, the one you are trying to hurt.
Jesus was talking to Saul? Paul? Wow, he must have been so surprised.
And even more so when he realized that
I can't see a thing.
Suddenly, Saul was blind. Then Jesus told him to go to Damascus anyway and wait there.
Why?
Because Jesus had a follower there named
Ananias.
Jesus spoke to Ananias in a dream and told him to go find Saul.
You mean the man that came to arrest us? The one who hasn't stopped making trouble? That mean man? Why do you want me to find him?
Then Jesus said,
He is the one I'm going to use to spread the good news about me to everyone, to Jews and those that aren't Jews, and even to kings.
So what did Ananias do?
He trusted Jesus. So when he found Saul, he prayed for him and something amazing happened.
I can see! I can see!
Wow!
Then something even more amazing happened.
What?
Saul became a follower of Jesus.
Double wow!
And then something even way more amazing happened.
What could that be?
Hey, Jesus is the Son of God! Hey, you! Jesus is the Son of God!
He started telling everyone about Jesus. So, Saul went from being Jesus' enemy
to being Paul, Jesus' friend.
And more importantly, a disciple.
I've got to tell everybody about Jesus. Anywhere, everywhere.
Whatever Paul did, he did with his whole heart. And now that he met Jesus, he was ready for God to use him to turn the Roman world upside down.
God really knew what he was doing when he chose him.
He sure did. First of all, Paul was really smart. As a Pharisee, he had spent years studying and memorizing God's law and the stories of Israel. Second, he spoke Hebrew, the language of Israel.
Shalom!
And he also spoke Greek, the language of the Roman Empire.
Hirete.
And there was one more thing that made Paul perfect for the job.
Really? What?
He was a Roman citizen, which meant
I can travel anywhere.
Paul could go everywhere in the Roman world and talk to anyone about
Jesus!
Right. So, Paul grabbed his things and
I'm hitting the road. Ciao. See ya.
Because of Paul's travels, groups of Jesus followers were popping up everywhere. They were given a new name, Christians, which means little Christs. And they began meeting together in groups we now call churches.
Wow! How great is that?
Very great. Though it wasn't always great.
It wasn't?
Sometimes Paul was attacked by people that wanted him to stop talking about Jesus. Other times he was arrested and thrown in jail.
That's terrible.
Yes, but God helped Paul in those hard times.
Really?
Yep. One time he was on a ship, and guess what happened?
Uh-oh. Don't tell me it sank.
It did.
It did.
But Paul and the crew made it to an island where the local people helped them.
Phew. That was nice.
It was, but then as Paul was building a fire, he got bit by
a poisonous snake!
Oh no, a snake? That's really terrible.
He's a goner.
But you know what Paul did? He trusted God. He shook the snake off and kept on working.
He did?
Uh-huh. When nothing happened to Paul, the people realized that they had seen
a miracle!
They were so excited that they brought sick people to Paul and
God healed them!
Wow!
So, you see, even in the hard times, Paul was filled with joy. God gave Paul the strength to be happy if he was full or if he was hungry, if he had money or if he had none.
If he was free or if he was in jail.
No matter how many hard things happened to Paul, he could be happy knowing God was with him. The Pharisees and the Sadducees, on the other hand, were not happy. And you know why.
Paul was supposed to be arresting Jesus' followers.
Yes, but instead he was helping churches grow all over the place. So, the Pharisees and Sadducees had Paul thrown in jail. And there he found out something really bad.
Uh-oh, what?
They were planning to kill him.
That's the most terrible... what did Paul do?
I am a Roman citizen. I appeal unto Caesar.
Appeal to Caesar? What does that mean?
I'll explain. Remember that Paul was a Roman citizen? By appealing to Caesar, the Roman ruler at the time, he was asking for Roman protection. So, Paul was sent all the way to Rome, where Caesar lived. Now, all he had to do was wait for his turn to tell Caesar about Jesus. But Caesar was a little busy, so Paul sat in jail for 2 whole years.
2 years? What did he do all that time?
Since he couldn't go out and tell people about Jesus,
I wrote letters.
Letters?
Yes, lots of letters that help churches learn how to be followers of Jesus. You've probably seen some of Paul's letters in the Bible, like Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians.
Oh, what's Philippians about?
That one was all about joy, and it was written to the Christians in Philippi.
Because Paul was full of joy, no matter what. It sure sounds like he stayed busy.
Yes, busy for Jesus, even when he was in jail.
Wow! God really helped Paul turn something that was terrible into something very good.
Yes, he did. He sure did. John was one of Jesus' friends. After Jesus left,
John traveled and preached for many, many years in many, many places, which meant that
more and more people started following Jesus.
John was happy. The new Christians were happy. But...
Uh-oh. Someone else wasn't happy?
The leaders of the Roman Empire didn't like what John was doing, so they arrested him and sent him away.
Where am I?
Patmos. It's an island.
But, it's tiny and, well, there's nobody here.
Right. Bye.
So they left John on that teeny tiny island?
For a long time. Time he spent thinking and praying. Then, one day, John asked God a question.
How does it end? How does all of this end?
He was asking that question when all of a sudden...
Let me show you.
What did God say?
Oh, God did more than say. He showed. God showed John what was going to happen in the end.
Ooh, what did God show?
Amazing, awesome, surprising things that had amazing, awesome, surprising meaning. There were lamps on stands, and lions, and a lamb, and strange creatures with wings, and a dragon.
Whoa, that sure doesn't look like a friendly one.
It wasn't.
And what else did God show?
Stars that fell down from the sky, giant hailstones, and big rumbling earthquakes. And if that wasn't enough, God showed John visions of
crazy creatures.
Locusts with long hair.
Look at those teeth.
God's answer to John was full of symbols.
What's a symbol?
A symbol is something that represents something else. Like a lamb is a symbol for Jesus. God was giving John pictures that told a story of all that would happen before God makes everything right. For all time.
Okay, but I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Well, why didn't God just tell John what was gonna happen? Why did God use all those strange pictures?
Well, God's message was like...
A treasure map?
Yes. In the end, God's enemies will be defeated. In the meantime, God tells his people what signs or symbols to watch for. So, like a treasure map...
Let's see, where am I? Ah! That cliff has the same shape as this one on the map. I'm close to the treasure, and I'm on the right track.
As we get closer to the end, this vision will make more sense.
Okay, but...
Yes?
Some of those things look a little scary.
Yes, they do. But remember, God is always with us. And someday he will destroy everything that is evil and make things right again. That sneaky snake Satan will try and hurt God's friends, but that snake has already lost. He's been beaten by...
Jesus!
Yes, the Lamb of God.
Wowee!
In the very, very end, everything will be made right. In John's vision, he saw a new heaven and a new earth. God will make a new city where everything will be restored, and we will live with him. And in the center of the city will be the tree of life.
Whoa! The tree of life?
Yes, and the tree of life will bring healing to all God's friends. You see, the story that started in a garden ends in a garden city, the city of God, where there is no sickness, no tears, no bullies, and no death. The kingdom of God in full bloom.
So the end of the story is like the beginning of another.
The beginning of forever.
Wow, I can hardly wait.
Neither can I. But in the meantime, do you know what we can do?
What?
We can tell others about Jesus and invite them to join us in a world without sin and evil, where we will live, work, eat yummy food, play, sing, and dance with the God who made us and loves us so much. Don't you want to come along?
I sure do.